John, the NFL has joined the streaming wars. LIV Golf continues to be in the news with Charles Barkley and now at former President Donald Trump's golf course. They don't seem to be going anywhere. And we have a pretty good guest to talk about it all.
Yeah, speaking of LIV, our big get is David Hill, who is advising LIV on their TV productions. David, of course, ran Fox Sports for 2 decades and has been involved with producing just about every single sport, including darts.
The double 12 and the 9 Dart King lands another one.
And we're back, the Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast. I'm Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for the New York Post. He's John Ourand, the media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. John, great get today, big get. David Hill, we already did the interview. You're going to hear in a little bit. Very good on LIV and also on the NFL, and just some very interesting stuff from David.
Such a good perspective, such an entertaining executive, one of the most entertaining executives I've ever covered. Also do want to give a quick shout out. That was Rod Studd of DAZN calling darts, which there was a massive crowd in there. It's worth a look if you want to find that clip on Twitter, like the crowd and the cheering. It's who would have thought for darts?
Yeah, and that David Hill producing that, he was the one who told you years ago that darts could be a big thing. And according to you, very electric on TV. All right, let's go. Who's up? Who's down?
Who's up? Who's down?
Andrew, let me start this off here. Who's up? We're in the middle of Big Ten media days. Still no media rights deal to talk about. But my who's up is Mark Silverman, Larry Jones. They're the Fox executives that are at the forefront of trying to sell the rights. And I can tell you, after reporting this out last week, there is a frenzy of companies that want to get these rights. If Fox is going to keep a package of it, CBS wants it, ESPN really wants it, Amazon is out there with a big bid, NBC, we'll see. They seem to be dropping off if we're doing the horse race of deals right now. But what this means for the Big Ten is a massive media rights deal. There continues to be a lot of interest among a lot of media companies in those rights.
All right, my who's up is still with Fox, and it's Jason Benetti going to Fox Sports. He's going to be their number 2 college football play-by-player. He's going to do MLB. He's going to do college hoops. He leaves ESPN. I thought ESPN could have made Jason Benetti their Sunday night play-by-player last year. They went with Carl Ravitch. There was a Boog Shambi who they could have gone with. And instead, Benetti leaves, 39 years old, has done real well with Peacock on their national broadcasts on their Sunday morning games. And then he's the White Sox play-by-player. He won't do Peacock anymore. He still will be the White Sox play-by-player. Fox Sports has done a nice job of picking off young play-by-players. They got Joe Davis now, their number 1 MLB play-by-player in replacing Joe Buck. And then he's going to be their number 2 NFL play-by-player. And then they have Adam Amin, who they brought in, who's also baseball, football. And I could make the argument Amin and Benetti might be better than Davis. So that's depth, and that's what you want. They're all in their 30s. So they got a strong contingent. They lost Joe Buck, but they got a young, strong contingent of play-by-players.
Well, let's go right into who's down. I know we're not the WWE pod, Andrew, but my who's down this week, it's got to be Vince McMahon. I mean, what a way to end a career. McMahon resigned as WWE chairman amid a host of sexual misconduct claims. His duties were taken over by his daughter, Stephanie McMahon, her husband, Triple H, and former CAA agent Nick Khan. What I noticed was that WWE stock went up right after he announced his resignation. And I think it's primarily on the idea that the company will be sold. And if it goes up for sale, there are going to be a ton of bidders. Comcast through NBC had licensed WWE Network for $200 million a year. It pays, I think it's $270 million for Monday Night Raw. Fox has a $200 million year deal for Friday night WWE. Endeavor already owns UFC. ESPN wouldn't be in there. We all know, we talk every week about how Amazon and Apple are circling and trying to pick up rights. So there's going to be a lot of interest in there. But one thing is that even though he resigned, Vince McMahon still owns the majority of the shares and the majority of the voting shares. So any sale is still going to have to go through him.
All right, my who's down is Bruce Springsteen. And
Ooh.
there's a lot of
I'm saying boo, not Bruce. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Bruce Springsteen is my who's down. There are a lot of sports writers who listen to this podcast, and just a moment for them. Just to give Bruce just a moment, because Bruce Springsteen's prices for his concert are ridiculous. Ticketmaster has dynamic pricing, and the tickets are thousands of dollars. Even the terrible seats are in the 500 range. The concerts for Bruce Springsteen, of course, are going to be expensive, and it's going to be something that, especially this could be his last tour, possibly. They're going to be expensive, but they are ridiculous. I wonder if dynamic pricing could become, something that we see more in sports. And I think, look, I get the argument for dynamic pricing. It's, well, ticket scalpers are going to take it and they're going to go to the secondary market and they're going to make the extra money. But what you're doing is you're pricing out the regular fan, because a lot of people would buy that ticket, and even if they could resell it, they would not resell it for anything. And to make them so ridiculous, right? We already expect to pay ridiculous prices for a Bruce Springsteen concert, but to make them so ridiculous in this manner, Bruce Springsteen is my who's down, and I feel for all the sports writers out there. And I like Bruce. I'm a big Bruce guy, because as a sports writer, you have to be.
Poor Bruce, your down should be Ticketmaster. Should be Bruce. He's not. He can't
do anything about that. He has nothing to do with it. His hands are clean here.
You know what? I guess he has a little bit to do with it, but this is all Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is the evil one here, not necessarily Bruce.
Well, you're always the one. Anytime I want to do an entity, you're like, make it a person. Make it a person. It's better. It's better. So there you go. The John Ourand theory of making it a person. Then you just turn on me in public. You're always like, oh, make it.
But there is, like, Bruce sings for the common man, right? Come on.
Yeah, he does. Exactly. We might have to. Maybe we can drop some sound here, a little Bruce in here. Yeah, it's about the common man. And now, common man. If you have, $2,000 to spend on a 4-hour concert, come on, let's go, Bruce.
Let's get right to the topics. Andrew, I've been dying to talk to you about this ever since you had an exclusive interview with Charles Barkley, which was exclusive, I guess, before he went to Dan Patrick, right? How long is that? I was going
to say it was exclusive until Barkley does his next interview.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time, it was exclusive.
You held the exclusive for at least 24. You held the exclusive for at least 24 hours. So congratulations. Yeah. Talk to him exclusively about LIV. Before you talk about what Barkley's going to do, I know you hate to make predictions, but is he going to go to LIV or not? What do you think?
Well, by the time people listen to it, we might already know. I say my prediction is he does not go to LIV. Gets a huge raise from Turner and stays there and gets a big bump. I reported, and he confirmed, he makes $10 million a year from Turner. I think they already knew that they're going to have to pay him more in light of the Brady $375 million deal, in light of what Romo makes, and Aikman, et cetera, that, Barkley, the greatest studio analyst of all time, at $10 million, even though it's a lot for what he does, still underpaid at this point. So they're gonna have to give him a big raise. So I say he does not do it, but that, I'm not a prediction guy. What do you got?
I thought he was going to do it, but you talked to him. So I
think he told me in an ideal world, he does both. I mean, that's what he said in an ideal world. But when he went on with Dan Patrick, he said he makes about $10 million in endorsements. And so let's just say that's all correct. So it's a $20 million. He did tell me they got to really outdo that number if they want him. So I think Charles Barkley would be great for LIV, because he's willing to take on the people who say, like, the LIV Tour shouldn't exist because of the Saudi Arabia money and their history of human rights violations, including, allegedly, according to our government, of killing a journalist. So he's a good job of doing a spokesman. He's obviously great on television, but at the end of the day, are they going to triple his salary? I know he said that on Dan Patrick. I don't think they're going to be $60 million. I mean, I'd be shocked. $60 million a year? Come on.
They don't have a business case over there. I mean, they pay just to get.
If you're paying him 60, like they're playing the golfers, I don't know how long their deals are, but they're like $200 million deals. So let's just say, I think they're probably 4-year deals. So they're probably getting like maybe $50 million a year. So you're going to pay the broadcaster more? I doubt it.
Andrew, what I found to be most interesting about your story is buried sort of toward the end of it. Barkley had a kitchen cabinet of bold-faced names: Mark Cuban, Michael Wilbon, the Gumbles, Brian and Greg Gumbel. who he talked to extensively about this. And from what you wrote, it appeared that all of them said, take the money, go after the money.
Yeah, Marchand was also in there. That was his fifth member of his contingent. Yeah, I think that they actually said take the meeting. They didn't necessarily said take the money, but they said you have to take this meeting. You have to see what they're going to say and go from there. And Barkley's biggest point was that LIV Golf and the people behind it, or I should really say the people behind the Saudi Arabians, that many companies do business with this group. And it's only the golfers and athletes who are having to answer for it. And it's a big deal. Like, we're taping this before the Trump tournament, later this week. But I think that's going to be a big focus. There's already an ad out there from a group of 9/11 people who lost family members and friends during 9/11. And so who are saying, you're taking blood money basically, and it's not worth it. You're turning your back on the country. And it's a pretty impactful ad. And so when you look at that, I mean, this one's, this is 30 miles, the Bedminster course in New Jersey, I think 30 miles from ground zero, and there's Trump involved. So the juxtaposition of all this is not, it's a terrible look. I mean, for the golfers at LIV and anybody involved in it, it just doesn't look good when it's put that way. But Barkley's point is other people are taking the money. And as we had David Hill, who's going to be on later, he brought up that, President Biden just met with the Saudi Arabians. So there is a, what about this type of thing going on?
Barkley is, I can't think of another on-air personality in sports who's more universally liked than Barkley. And he gets away with a lot. I mean, he's almost like Teflon in terms of being able to, he's just genuine and he's himself. If he makes this move to LIV Golf, what will this do to his reputation, in your opinion?
He's interesting because he's the one guy that might be able to keep his endorsements. Even in the story when I was talking to him and he was talking about selective outrage, he brought up Nike. Now, he didn't say why he brought up Nike, but we all know that, they've been accused of using child labor. This has been going on for, years and years. And he, how many people when we talk about their own endorsement deal, in such a negative light? Like, he didn't go into detail. It wasn't the nature of the story. So I didn't go like, hey, what do you mean by that? Even though I knew what he meant. So he's different. And if he were to keep his sponsors, that kind of changes things. I do think the timing of where this tournament is this week, and Barkley saying on Dan Patrick, he needs to leave there with an offer. I do think this one's a little, the timing is not great. You know what I mean? In terms of I don't know. We talked about this earlier, and you made a good point before the show. I mean, we don't want to demean the 9/11. This is to me, you said this, and I agreed with it. When we talk about selective outrage, well, it's outrage, right? Maybe it is selective in some regards, but there still can be outrage, even if it's selective. That doesn't mean that it's not warranted just because not everyone's getting it. Maybe that's not fair, and maybe they should be looking at these other entities and companies and asking these same questions, but it doesn't mean the outrage is misplaced.
I have to tell you, it makes me bristle to call it selective outrage, because it's not a selective, it's very real outrage over very specific involvement, the Saudi involvement in 9/11. Never forget, right? I mean, it's very real outrage over the brutal murder of a journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. I mean, players and their executives who move over, they're going to continue to take hits over their reputation. I mean, this is not, don't equate this to buying an iPhone that happens to be made in China, or buying, a Nike sneaker that, this is totally different. This is sports washing is real, Andrew.
Yeah. But they would argue that, Newcastle and the Premier League is owned by the same group. It's been going on all over the place. Again, that doesn't make it right? Just because this came into our, part of the world. And it's kind of interesting because, people look at sports writing and sports reporters, kind of the toy store, but just the nature of how things are covered, it's a little bit different than corporate America can kind of sit behind. They don't have to do press conferences. They don't really have to answer questions, as opposed to athletes, where it's, basically the practice where athletes and people involved in sports outside of Jim Dolan, the Garden. They have to answer questions.
And it is a toy store, and that's why sports washing is such an effective strategy, because people don't want to read about that in the sports page. I mean, how often do you hear about that? I think that's the first time we've ever gotten into a geopolitical thing. We've been going on for about a year, and it's
only Liv. Yeah, Liv's been the one that we've done. And the one interesting thing also that came from that interview with Barkley, he told me that he and Norman thought that they're going to get a TV deal, and Barkley thought so too. Barkley could maybe
I think so too, and you think so too. Eventually,
I do think, like, again, we're doing this before this plays out this week. I think this week, I'm interested to see how this plays out, because I think the focus is going to be a little bit more intense this week.
I think it's already played out. I think that you look at some of the PGA Tour fields. So the PGA Tour field last weekend was as weak as I've ever seen it. Like we're seeing big name golfers move over. We're seeing more people like Barkley, like David Hill, talking about selective outrage and sort of talking about it in that sense. I am virtually certain they're going to end up with a deal, not a big money deal. It could even be a time buy, but they're going to end up with a deal where they're going to be on a traditional linear television network next year.
Yeah, I probably agree with you, because people move on to the next thing, and they seem prepared just to keep moving forward and not looking back. John, let's move to the next topic. The NFL makes some news. NFL Plus. Just first off, I think I know your take, but give me your take for everyone else.
Well, it's hard to move to streaming after just talking about LIV like that. But you know what? My take is that I was very happy to write about this yesterday. I conducted interviews with NFL executives, wrote a couple of stories, and there really is nothing new there. This is all on tablets and on mobile devices. You can spend $5 a month and you can watch all your local games and all the national games. And if you spend $10 a month, you can see replays. This has all been done before. But the reason that I wrote so much about it is not for what's happening in July 2022. It's what's going to happen potentially in July 2026. And this has the feel to me of launching NFL Network back in the early 2000s. I mean, the NFL is creating a place to where eventually it could put exclusive games on. And, if they're not getting the bids on Thursday night football that they were expecting, it could be a place. It's not going to happen with Sunday Ticket this year, certainly. But the next time Sunday Ticket comes up, if Apple or Amazon, it looks like it's probably going to be Apple, but if they decide like, oh boy, this is too rich and we don't want to do it again, the NFL could take it and put it on this platform. So this to me is not what it is today. It's what it's going to grow to become. And I think that's what's particularly interesting about the launch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do want to make it clear, like if you're in the New York market, for example, and you have the Fox Sports app, if you authenticate your cable, you'll be able to watch the games they're offering on NFL Plus. I mean, the NFL, they are the best at just reselling that same slice of pizza. And you took a bite of it. Let me take it back. We're going to sell it to somebody else. And they just resell it. These games used to be on Yahoo, right? And then NFL, was it Game Pass or NFL Pass?
Yeah, Verizon had the mobile right. They just gave up the mobile right. So I actually question how many subscribers they got out of it and what the viewership was on this, because Verizon did it.
Yeah, I had Verizon. Like I used it a couple of times, but it wasn't like something that made me use their service, right? It's my cell phone working. And you could get the games digitally even without it, right? If I had my app, from, I think at that point, CBS, and maybe now it's Paramount Plus, I'm not positive how that works. Or Fox, I'll be able to see the games anyway, and then the national games as well. So yeah, this is a long-term play, right? It gives them leverage, number one, going down the road. If like they don't get the bids they want, that they could say, oh, we'll just take them in-house. Let me ask you this, though. We love projecting here, okay? Do you think one day the NFL Plus is like the only way you can get digital games?
No. I think that they are going to have that out there as a way to entice to get people to continue to bid. It's another bidder, and it's a viable option, but there's too much money out there in the NFL that, I mean, one day being 20 years from now, maybe, I don't know, but in the foreseeable future, no chance. What about you?
I want to know how Apple does selling subscriptions, but yeah, probably not. I'm probably with you. I'm probably with that it stays with the entities, and they just kind of transform to where they need to, and they spend a lot of money.
I can see the odd one game or two games being exclusive to NFL Plus, but any kind of significant package, I would be really surprised to see that happen.
All right, let's move to Sunday Ticket though, because this is my question, my next question. See what you think about this. Do you think Apple could be involved in NFL Plus? Because they had to announce NFL Plus now because they needed it before the preseason. And obviously the Apple deal is not whatever, the I's aren't dotted and the T's aren't crossed. But could NFL Plus be part of, the Apple scenario? Not that it's going to be combined with Sunday Ticket, but when you talk about NFL media and, what do you think of that? Because I kind of think that makes a lot of sense for NFL Plus to somehow be teaming up with Apple, or we think it's Apple, but if, maybe Amazon, with this service.
Yeah, maybe Google, maybe ESPN, but all our sources are telling us that it's that it's Apple. I think that if this was strictly a rights deal for Sunday Ticket, it would have been done by now. It would have been done months ago. I think what's complicating matters and what's holding up matters is that the NFL also is trying to tie in partial ownership to NFL media. And so I think that that's all sort of moving forward. Whether or not NFL Plus will be part of that is still to be seen. But there are other aspects to it, like NFL Red Zone. What's going to happen with that? Because if you talk to DirecTV executives, they hated NFL Red Zone. They thought that it was taking subscribers away from them. A Dish Network, it's the DirecTV's biggest competitor, was able to market that it had all NFL games because they carried the NFL Red Zone channel. And so like anybody that's going to invest potentially $2 billion in Sunday Ticket will want some sort of control over NFL Red Zone as well. So it is all getting tied in. And would Apple be part of this? Yeah, I think that's entirely possible.
It's going to be interesting. And you think Apple, the charge will still be $300 if you want Sunday Ticket?
That's originally what I thought. I know that the contracts that Fox and CBS have demand that the Sunday Ticket have a premium price attached to it. But if you look at the Roger Goodell's quotes, if you read Brian Rolap, who's listening to this pod, thank you, Brian. If you read his
writer from NFL.com,
his op-ed, they're talking about doing different things. And so would it be 300 or could it be, could it be less? Could they sell by the game? I mean, that they have some of the comments coming out of the NFL suggest that it's not going to be the exact same Sunday Ticket that we see on DirecTV. And what that means, I have no clue right now.
Let's go and hit a couple more topics, and then we're going to get to David Hill in a moment. The NFL booth, this is something we asked David about, which booth he's most excited about, listening to, and with all the moves, which one excited him the most, in terms of these huge moves. He's a huge announcer guy. As you'll listen, he thinks announcers make the broadcast. He thinks they're worth all the money they're getting paid. Which booth are you most excited to listen to or to hear? Like, are you more intrigued by?
This is going to make you laugh, but Amazon, I'm dying to see, first of all, Al Michaels is a legend. I'm dying to see what Herb Street is like going every single week, because I think he's the best college analyst that's out there right now. Will he be as good as the NFL analyst? And I think the idea that Amazon is coming in as the fourth or fifth broadcaster and already has a Hall of Fame booth just about is totally unique. And I like those, we already know they're not going to get big audiences, but the production is going to look and feel really big as you watch it.
Okay, my one that I'm most intrigued about is Fox. Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. They're going to end the year on February 11th in Glendale, Arizona, doing the Super Bowl. And to me, they're the ones that, you mentioned Al and Kirk. I think we kind of know the level that's going to be at. Tirico did Monday night, so Tirico and Collinsworth, we kind of know the level that's going to be at. You look at what they have in Burkhardt and Olson. It could be very good, but we don't know that yet. And they're going to be, to me, the most scrutinized and the most, you have a question mark. And then you also have Tom Brady looming in the background of the whole year in terms of, what's going to go on with Fox Sports. So to me, that's the most intriguing booth. But they're all going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be very fun year in terms of watching the games, and not only that, but really listening and seeing the productions. That's going to be fun. Before we move to David Hill, let's just do a little baseball mid-season review. You were at the All-Star game last week. Now you're back. You guys listen to last week's podcast, you get that reference. And so mid-season review. Give me overall what you found out, what you're thinking, and give me your views on where MLB is at right now.
Overall, I think ESPN shedding those midweek games that drew low audiences has been really good for ESPN. The Sunday Night Baseball viewership wise is down a tick, but it's doing particularly well. Fox with a new booth. Joe Davis has been calling games, as we know. Those ratings are down pretty significantly. It's full season wise. It's sort of looking it's not looking particularly good for Fox in terms of ratings. It could be one of the lowest viewed MLB seasons in its history. But for me, it's all about Peacock and Apple. And we've discussed this before. Peacock to me is, NBC brings, decades of sports production experience into Peacock, and you can tell as you watch it. And Apple, it's trying to do something different. Apple loves its telecast. They think that it attracts casual fans. Of course, we have no clue what the audience is. We have no clue who watches it. I do know that traditional baseball fans, who are the ones who are most likely to go and watch it on Apple, can't stand Apple's presentation of it. Apple's like, they're not going to change. You're going to see little bits in here where they change, little nibbles at the edges, but they like the idea of a different type of telecast that goes after casual fans. So it looks like that type of telecast is going to be around to stay.
I get it. Like, I don't think you need to go Costas and Jim Cott, right? Like, old tried and true, right? Legendary announcers, have done it for a long time. So you can do something new. I don't know. I think that from what I understand in entertainment, they were a little bit slow to understand entertainment when they, Apple Plus and their programming. I just think they're a little slow to understand that. I don't know. We can't see their numbers, so I don't know. Maybe they're telling the truth, but most of the time, I would think it's fans of the teams playing. My team is not on the regular channel, or RSN, and so now I got to find on Apple. And then you go there, your regular announcers aren't there, and it's a different broadcast. I can't imagine that really going over too well with most people, casual fans or not. Something different's okay, but it's only been okay in my opinion. I like, again, we've talked about this. I like Amazon's strategy with the Yankees. You got 21 games. They're on Fridays. It's your regular announcers, and it's just there's more of a bond there. I just feel like these other broadcasts, the Peacock one, I like that strategy. The Apple one, I just don't think that really makes much sense. People, like you just said earlier, they weren't watching really on Monday and Wednesdays on ESPN. How many people you think are really watching on Apple TV on a Friday night? That's a hard sell for that to really be resonating. I tend to doubt that's doing particularly well.
Andrew, I'm so excited by our big get this week. Legendary producer and executive in the business, David Hill. David has spent 22 years at Fox, launched the NFL on Fox, did the World Series, Stanley Cup, BCS championships. I'm sure I'm missing, leaving out a couple of things. 2015, David started his own production company and produced everything from the Oscars and darts. Darts productions are amazing, by the way. To Formula One, LIV Golf. David, I know you don't do podcasts or interviews a lot these days, so we're very fortunate for your momentary lapse in judgment. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, listen, you're making me feel very much at home. You happen to have behind you a map of the London Underground. I
do, in fact, yes. I lived in London in the late 90s, and my daughter spent a year there at the London School of Economics.
Well, it's the traffic's getting so bad in London that the only way to get around town is the Underground. So I'm very, very familiar with that map.
So where are you right now on that map?
I'm immediately between actually Notting Hill Station and Kensington High Street. Our house in London is just right between the two.
Oh, great. Well, David, I want to get started with the story that is making all the headlines, of the most clicks that we get at Sports Business Journal every time I write about LIV Golf. You are doing the productions, TV productions for LIV Golf.
No. I'm helping Will Steger and James Watson. And I got involved at the get-go. Greg rang up and said, well, could I give him a hand? I said, sure. And so I've been working with Will and with James, and what I tried to do was create a framework for them to work in.
What are you trying to accomplish with LIV? Like how
Make golf interesting.
And how do you do that?
Well, how long do we have? How many days will we take, John, to explain?
We'll keep you on for a full hour if you'll have us, David.
Okay, here's the horrendous truth about golf. The last figures I saw of golf tournament, I think it was the International, 50% of the audience, the television audience, was 65 plus. 50% was 65 plus, which means they're dead in 20 years. 78% was 50 plus. 78% was 50 plus. So what does that tell you about what golf means to people on television? The audience is dying. So Greg's come up with a great idea with the shotgun start and the fact that it's compressed into 4 or 5 hours. And so that the telecasts of necessity will move like a greased weasel, and it will be fascinating, interesting, and fun.
So how do you get younger? Is it just a matter of timing, make it shorter and
one of the interesting things, I haven't been to the 2 tournaments that have been played thus far, but apparently, according to the guys who were there, that one was in London, one I think was in Portland, was that the people turning up were like 35 and under. So it's fresh, it's new, it's different, and there we go. Simple as that.
Andrew had broke a story last week about Charles Barkley. Looking at LIV, LIV hired David Faraday. How are you approaching on-air talent as in terms of basically what they bring to the LIV Golf telecasts?
It's interesting, actually, that our very first meeting, when we started discussing the philosophy of the telecast, was immediately after I'd just come back from John Madden's funeral. That what it reinforced, and a very sad moment, was that the importance of announcers. I've always claimed with the great announcers that you could cover anything with one camera and it would look good. The announcer is the key, because the sport's all about human beings to human beings, and the announcer does that. There are a few great announcers. There's a lot of good ones, and there's an equal number of bad ones. So what we're doing with LIV Golf is that we have Ebor White, and this is going to sound weird, but you probably know him best as the soccer commentator in Ted Lasso. And we're thrilled to get David Faraday, because David actually injects fun into the commentary. And Will and James are looking at some other guys to add to it. So it's the commentary team that does it. It's like you've seen the kind of the arms race with great announcers, with Joe and with Troy and what's happening. They are the most important part of any producer's weapon, how good your announcers are. That's simple.
And David, when you look at Barkley, he met with Greg Norman last week. How do you see using Barkley? What would be your advice?
I have no idea what Charles and Greg talked about. I'm here in London. I'm working for Formula One. I have no idea.
Okay. Well,
but you must admit, I think you must admit that Charles just might bring something to the commentary.
100%. Well,
it's not going to be, here we are on the third. I think it's a fly. He has slide to the left, the puppy white clouds. I think Charles might bring a little bit more. Who knows?
But David, it's still golf. What more can you bring? You have to put the volume a little bit.
I'm the world's worst golfer. Actually, I played St Andrews about 18 years ago, and there was a special, very emotional award at the end of my round. And they all came out and they gave me this little thing, and they said, you found more bunkers and gorse bushes than anyone else who's played in the entire 150 years. And what was worse, I had this caddy, and I kept saying, why are you looking at your watch? He said, Mr. Hill, it's a compass.
So David, I did talk to Barkley last week, and he told me that, when they met in an Italian restaurant in Atlanta, he and Greg Norman, and he said Greg thought they're going to get a TV deal. So my question is two parts, because I think you have a unique perspective.
I don't know. I'm helping with the production. Distribution, I've got nothing to do with.
True, but
I would imagine,
yes,
if I was a betting man, which I am, that I would imagine that a network will probably look at this and say, this is really cool. This is different. This might just appeal to people under 95. I might just put this on my schedule. Now, that is hypothesis.
Yeah, but you were on that side, right? If you were, we go back, whatever it was, 15, 20 years ago.
100 years ago, when the earth was cooling, Andrew, when the earth was cooling.
Exactly. Europe was cool, and you were, making decisions. So you're part of it. Obviously, the Saudi Arabian money has become a big story because of their human rights violation and killing of a journalist.
Was this the same people that President Biden met with the other day?
It is.
Oh, right. Gotcha. Is this the same group that the UK government is selling arms to?
I don't know that, but I trust you've done your research. Yes.
So the President of the United States goes to meet them.
He did.
Right.
So, well, I guess, look, I'm not saying this is the counter argument is people are taking a direct check from these people, and that's different. But I guess my question is more of a TV question though for you. When you're an executive at a network, is that a factor into what you're doing, or the reasons that you just outlined? You say, you know what, other people are doing business with these folks, and it's okay for us to do business as well.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't fully understand the question.
Well, if you were at Fox Sports or Turner or one of these places, would you advise that this is an issue that we have to be concerned about in terms of the controversy?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I work for Formula One races in the kingdom.
So you basically, this was Charles' point, it's hypocritical that we have selective outrage here.
Really? Now, that's a very good way of putting it.
That's why Charles also, I mean, in terms of making the points, he says what he thinks. A lot of the golfers didn't really have great answers when they first joined and they were asked about these things, which I thought was a little bit surprising in terms of their answers. But so you think, though, you don't know, but you're the other thing about a TV deal, it seems to me it wouldn't be, obviously these aren't going to be NFL type $1 billion deals. This is a new entity. This is to get on the air for you guys to get distribution. And for the networks, it gives them more programming, which something is new and has a lot of big names now.
It might just be cool.
Yeah.
It might just revolutionize golf and might just get people back to watching golf. There's two things you got to worry about in the sport. And there's two graphs. Graph A is ratings over the decade. Now, how well have the broadcasters been handling that sport? Now, if that rating is dropping, the other rating you look at is what is the demographic? Am I maintaining my demographic, which traditionally has been in sports between the ages of 38 and 41? And when you look at the demographics of golf, which are going sky high, and when you look at the ratings of golf that are going down, wouldn't you think that something new, fresh, and interesting might revitalize the nation's interest in the sport on television?
Look, I don't think there's any doubt that golf needs a change. Like, I do think for those of us who don't follow golf as closely as others, it's like, it's jaw-dropping that the last golfer in somebody who doesn't make the cut makes no money in the PGA. I mean, that's just, to me, that's crazy how that's even possible.
I'll tell you the group that golf on television is really, really good for. Insomniacs.
David, I want to pivot away from LIV and talk about F1, which you've been doing since 2015, I believe, right? Or 2017.
I came in when I've been producing, I think I produced my first Formula One race in Australia back in 85, 86. And I've loved the sport ever since. It was, it's always been something that's appealed to me. And when CBC sold their interest in golf to Liberty, and Liberty very, very wisely chose Chase Carey as the CEO, And Chase called and said, listen, would you give us a hand and fix the television coverage? And I said, love to. So I think that, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago now.
Formula One, David, just went from a US TV deal of $5 million a year to somewhere between $75 and $90 million a year. What have you done with the production I'm not giving you full credit for it, David, but what have you done with the production to sort of help popularize the sport?
It was my part of it was part of the overall deal, and the credit all goes to Chase Carey. Chase, when he came in, knew he had to do 5 things. He had to stop the arms race because you had 3 teams, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, who were spending in excess of $500, $600 million or pounds a year. He had to put a salary cap on, which everyone said was totally impossible. Chase managed to do that. The second thing was the cars were over-engineered. And so he hired Ross Brawn, who is kind of like a god in Formula One. And Ross hired all these aerodynamicists to redesign the car. What was happening, the overly engineered car was putting up this wall of air behind it. So passing was very, very difficult. And so that Ross Brawn's guys came in and working with the FIA, redesigned the car. So you see 3 wide and 4 wide racing that has never happened in F1. 3, the next thing that Chase had to do was energize social media that Bernie Ecclestone had refused because he wasn't getting paid. And so that Chase invested heavily in the digital side and then encouraged the teams to use social media to promote their drivers. The other thing was to promote interest in the United States. And so Chase started 2 new races, one in Miami, the other in Vegas. So now there's 5 races in North America: Montreal, Austin, Vegas, Miami, and now Mexico City. And at the same time, he signed the deal with Netflix for Drive to Survive. Now, a documentary series per se is not going to get you anywhere, but when it's made by, in my opinion, the best documentarian in the world, James Gay Reese, who made the Oscar-winning in 2016 Amy Winehouse documentary, did the Ed Center documentary, and James was able to take something that was mechanical and mathematical and turn it into a soap opera. So he engendered this huge interest in the United States. I was brought in to fix the television. The television was all over the place. There is a wonderful English phrase, a shambolic holics, which is what it was. There was a bit of rearrangement and took a while, but now I think it's rocking and rolling. And we had a really good day yesterday in France, which normally is a really tedious race because the track's dreadful. It's not dreadful, it's just boring. And then finally, he had to find a new CEO to run it. And he did a worldwide search, this is what Chase did, and came up with Stefano Domenicali, who is like not only a live wire, but he ran the Ferrari team till 2014, and then he became CEO at Lamborghini. So what Chase did in 5 years was take a sport that was moribund and on the way down and dying and revitalize it and energize it. And so all these parts came together, and there you go.
Give me that British word again. What was it? The British phrase?
Shambolic holics. It's a total I tell you, Gov, it's a total shambolic holics.
We thought we spoke English, John. Apparently, we don't speak English.
Separated by a common language.
My wife is American. As you know, I'm an Australian out of London. And the first 2 years of our relationship was pardon me. She ended up finding a book that had British English and American English, and it was how 2 cultures are separated by a single language.
That's great. Look, I want to move to the NFL, and we know you already said what you think of announcers, how important they are to broadcast. When you look at all the NFL movement with Troy and with Joe going to ESPN, Tom Brady in the on-deck circle for Fox, you look at Mike Tirico replacing Al Michaels, Michaels going to Amazon with Kirk Herbstreit on the new Thursday night package. If you're David Hill, which move do you like the most? I'm not saying, I know you probably, from talking to you earlier a couple of months ago, I think you probably like them all, but which one do you like the most?
It's very tough for me to grade them. I like a lot of personal friends, and I admire and respect them all. I think I've always been a big Tirico fan, Mike, ever since he started at ESPN. I've thought Mike's got this wonderful quality about him, and I think he's going to do really, really well moving into Al's spot. Joe and Troy, I love. I kind of they're like family for me. But I think the interesting move is Tom Brady. I think that Tony Romo came out of a box and he was fabulous. But with Tom, you've got this remarkable history, and that you call it corporate knowledge. And he's seen virtually everything, he's experienced everything, smart as hell. And I think that when he moves in, that's going to have the greatest impact. You know, everyone says that people watch the game and the announcers don't matter, but they do. I'll never forget, John Madden and I used to have long conversations about the philosophy behind announcing and broadcasting and what you did and how you did it. And John came up with the greatest line, typical. And he said, you know what we commentators do is we tell them what they're seeing, but not seeing. And that sums up what the great announcers do, that us mere mortals can look at the screen and see an action. But it's like I've been so lucky in my life to work with some of the greats. Tim McCarver in baseball, who I think was just absolutely magic and superb. And to me, the great combination was him and Joe, which was him and Joe and Tim. To me, was perfect. Murray Walker doing Formula One, John Madden doing football, Richie Benaud doing cricket, and it's been my honor and privilege to work with these greats that took a sport and just catapulted it into another arena. So to me, it doesn't matter. You know who the beneficiary of all this is? It's the public and the National Football League.
David, you just ran through a bunch of sports that you've personally worked on. What's your favorite? What's your favorite to do?
American football. I came to it. I came to it as Sean McDonough's dad actually in Boston said, Hill doesn't know if a football's puffed or stuffed. And I said, yeah, he's absolutely right. But the more I came to understand, and the more, and it was talking to Jimmy Johnson, talking like long conversations with Howie Long, with Terry Bradshaw, and what went into a game. And to me, it became a violent 3D chess match. And it's like that watching a great game of pro football to me is the precision and the athleticism and the commitment is, I thoroughly enjoy it. Not to say it's great being in England because I can turn on the TV and watch cricket, which I can't see in Los Angeles.
Are you a one-day cricketer or the full test match?
I like the whole lot. It's like, this is something that all you guys, you got to watch a game that goes 5 days and can end in a draw. I said some of the most exciting sports I've ever produced was a 5-day test match that ended in a draw. So there you go.
Andrew, one of the reasons that I have so enjoyed covering David over my career is that he's made sports fun. Yeah, there's so many innovations. I mean, the glowing puck was just a fabulous innovation. Just to get it didn't last long, but it was.
Because John, the reason it didn't last long during the glowing puck that all the Canadians wanted to string me up. It was hockey had its highest rating ever. And then we lost the contract. The contract went to ESPN, and ESPN didn't invest the money that Fox did in the sport. But had the sport, had hockey stayed with the sport, I guarantee you the ratings would be 2 to 3 times what it is now. If you can't see the principal object, why watch?
David, your name is associated with so many things like that. What's your favorite innovation that you oversaw coming out?
Well, it was the the score and time in the corner. That is now ubiquitous. And
I noticed that you did not call it the Fox box. Should we call it
my family wants it called the Hill box. Actually, it was in this very flat where I dreamed it up, that I'd been walking the dogs and I came back in. This is when I was running Sky Sports, and I turned on a football match that Chelsea was playing. It was on the BBC. And I'm sitting there watching for 20 minutes, and I suddenly realized I didn't know what the score was. I thought, God, if I was down at Stamford Bridge, I'd just look across, there'll be the score and the time. And then, boom, if I get soccer, I'll just put a little chyron, which character generate, up in the corner. So we got soccer, we started the EPL, and I started doing it. My boss rang me up. So that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Take it down. I said, gotcha, sure, done. And so I just kept doing it. And then when I went to the States, I thought, well, it's going to work. So I did it, and we did a preseason game up in Candlestick Park. And John went on about it. Well, you can look at this, you can put your turkey in and then come back out and know exactly what's what. And I got 5 death threats. I had 5 very well-written letters saying you're a foreigner, you're screwing with football, and we're going to kill you. And so I had a meeting with the LAPD threat squad and a couple of FBI agents who said, we're taking it seriously. And I said, really? Really? And he said, yeah. And I said, why? They said, well, there's no spelling mistakes. From that moment on, I watched every spelling bee I could, saying, is that a potential assassin? So what they offered me was a kind of a license to carry a gun, and I figured that I was quite happy with 10 toes. I didn't want to lose any, so I upped that up. And if they're still looking for me, I've just moved to London. So there you go, pal. You missed your opportunity. So it was, to me, it was that idea about putting the score and the time up there that the American press ridiculed. Rudy Matsky from the USA Today ridiculed. My fellow executives ridiculed. No one's gonna watch it. They know what the score is. Okay. And now it's ubiquitous.
I don't think I would have ridiculed it if I was writing. What year was that? 94?
1994.
Yeah, so I was like in college. I think I thought it was a good idea, David. I gotta be.
Yeah, I was a youngster.
I don't think I would have thought. I mean, obviously, it's in hindsight, it seems obvious, such a great idea. But those are the best ones, the ones that become ubiquitous and just are sort of a part of what you expect in a broadcast. So, but yeah, I don't know what they were thinking though, because I mean, obviously, it was a great idea, but why wouldn't you want to know the most important information at all times? It just makes perfect sense.
Andrew, thank you. Yes, that's exactly what it was. The glowing puck led to everything we did. The brilliant Stan Honey, who was the brains and the genius behind all that. And so we're able in 2000 to put GPSs in NASCARs, and so we could tag them, and we tracked in 3-dimensional space. And so that NASCAR was the first automotive series where cars were tagged, speed, laps, all the other stuff came through. But I think that, again, it was Stan Honey, who was a genius, who understood it, was the first down line for the NFL. And Commissioner Tagliabue said that he believed that had done more to explain the game to people around the world than anything else. So I'm stoked with that too. The other thing is Red Zone. But now this is Eric Shanks and I came up with this, and that is really proud of that.
Yeah, that's a great one, right? That one started in Europe first, right? They did it in
no. It was on radio. It was on RAI, RAI, and Eric was across setting up or helping set up Sky, the sports division of Sky Italia, and actually he was so beloved by the Italian staff that when he came back to the States, they pulled together and bought him a Ducati, and he's walked in and said, "Look at this! They've given me a Ducati." I said, "They might want you to really injure yourself."
All right. And then
so we were both working at DirecTV then, and so away we went.
My last one, the one I don't like that's been innovated recently, is they put the probability of someone winning or probability of someone getting a hit, and I think that is counterintuitive to what you invented when you put the score. It's like we're watching to find out, right? And it doesn't, the probability, what's the difference if it's 60%, let's say 40% that he's going to get a hit? Like, who cares? Let's watch what happens. I think that is just cluttering up the screen and it's not even like, it doesn't tell you anything. He's either going to get a hit or not. I mean, yeah, there's a better chance. I think so. What's your opinion on that one?
Well, I don't know what that is because I haven't seen it. But what we're doing in Formula One is we can mathematically predict when a car can overtake. So that we put up graphics that say like the attack that's happening. And you had it yesterday with there's a couple of big chases. We say like 4 laps that he's going to take him or be in an attacking position. So I think that's in Formula One, in auto racing, I think that's fair enough. The other thing, probability, whatever, maybe people might be gambling on it, Andrew.
Yes, 100%, 100%. That has to do with gambling, of course.
The thought. The thought.
That does have to do with gambling.
Andrew, I do have one question. So David Hill is talking to us from his flat in London, where you're breaking heat records and you're drinking hot tea. Didn't Americans teach you anything, David? Why on earth would you be drinking hot tea?
It's actually my flat is occupied by my daughter, Annie Hill, who is NBC News's digital European editor, and she invested in fans. We don't have air conditioning here, and I told her what a great idea it was because fans move hot air from one side of the room to the other. It's fabulous.
Cheers to you, David. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right, guys.
Andrew, I think anybody that's going to live should listen to this interview because I think David Hill basically laid out a roadmap for how you should answer the questions of people going to live. I've said already, we both said, I disagree. It's not selective outrage. It's very real outrage. But I think that the way that David handled it, if you're not going to say, I just want the money, then that's a way to go, and just sort of to look elsewhere and point at other things to say, like, look, we're okay because they're doing that.
John, yeah, I agree with you. I think the outrage is real and there's questions to answer. What happens with Barkley? He'd be great for LIV. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens with his contracts. I think ultimately he's definitely staying at Turner. I'd be shocked if somehow he's leaving Turner. And I thought what David Hill on a different subject said about the announcers. He said they are as important. They deserve this money, that they make it. They make the broadcast. I don't think I'm as extreme as he is, but I do think they really complement it. And I think they do make a difference. They tell the stories in a way that can make it engaging, kind of like what we try to do in media. I mean, we try to make it so you're interested in stuff that maybe you're not as interested in, right? Like I am more interested in Sinclair after talking to you for these months and months than I ever was before. So that's an interesting story. Somebody told me they're definitely going bankrupt the other day. Somebody told me that they're definitely going, by the way. So who's in the know? But we'll see. Your guys at Sinclair, maybe they'll rally. But bottom line, I think that LIV and where it goes, and if they get a TV deal, is going to be one of the more interesting stories that we have going forward.
All right. Well, it's time for us to go to our call of the week.
Call of the week.
Andrew, Sydney McLaughlin broke the world record in the 400-meter hurdles at the World Athletics Championships in Oregon. Here's Lee Diffie on the call for NBC.
Remember what Addo told you about the world record, how it just continually keeps getting broken. Sydney McLaughlin has left them behind. Femke Bol comes on the inside of Dalila Muhammad now. Please watch the clock. The world record is 51:41. Sydney McLaughlin, the 22-year-old American, there is no stopping her. 50.6, it's a world record. Sydney McLaughlin has just smashed her own record.
This is why I like that call, Andrew. He got me early in the race, focused on the world record and what that number was. His excitement level grew as a race went. It was a totally appropriate excitement level. And I just thought that he really matched what was an incredible race.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. Great call there. But this is what I wanted for call of the week. And John shot it down. Lindsay Adler from The Athletic. She was at Camden Yards last week or so, and she tweeted out, Aroldis Chapman allowed a 3-run home run to Anthony Santander to bring this game
Santander, your Baltimore accent is, come on.
I don't know, Santander. All right. To bring this game to 7-6 Yankees. A middle-aged man in front of the press box in an Oriole bucket hat is flipping the bird, in parentheses, not the mascot, at nearby Yankee fans. John, was that you?
All right. First of all, Lindsay, in Baltimore, they're floppy hats. They're not bucket hats. Come on. Geez.
This isn't about Lindsay Adler. This is a good tweet from Lindsay Adler. This is about John Ourand. Was it you with a floppy hat on? We'll get that right. Floppy hat, flipping the bird. Were you flopping and flipping?
Here's how I'll answer that. I'll answer that like one of your exact games. You're trying to pin me down now. It could have been. I had that kind of excitement. I had that kind of excitement going as I was watching that home run. Absolutely.
All right, Lindsay Adler, if you're listening, next time we need pictures because we need to see if this looked like John Ourand. All right, that's gonna do it. We want to thank David Hill for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that interview. We did enjoy talking with David. He's always entertaining. He does impersonations, the Barkley impersonation, or not the golf, not the not Barkley impersonation of a quiet golf. And I'm sure everyone listening was like, is this thing working?
It went 30 seconds. It went dead silent just about.
Tremendous. I loved it. I got to keep that whole thing in there. So that was good. And then talking with you, as always, is great. I'm going to see you next week. If you can rate, review, and subscribe, that is helpful and appreciated.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.